Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're peeling back the heavy, blood-stained curtain of history to look at something truly unsettling. You've heard of the Black Death, the plague that wiped out half of Europe. But what if I told you that the cure was often more terrifying than the disease itself? We're talking about a time when science didn't exist and desperation drove people to do the unthinkable. Tonight we're diving into the bizarre, the failed, and the downright gruesome medical miracles of the medieval world. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll be very glad you live in the 21st century. The year is 1348. The air in London, Paris, and Florence is thick with the smell of decay. People are dropping in the streets, their bodies covered in painful baseball-sized swellings called buboes that ooze black pus. People are terrified. They don't know about bacteria or fleas. They think the atmosphere has turned toxic or that God is punishing them. In this state of pure, unadulterated panic, the doctors of the era, men often wearing those haunting bird-like masks, stepped in with solutions that sound like something out of a horror movie. Let's start with one of the most common yet stomach-churning practices, the Vicary method. Imagine you're lying in a dark, cold room, shivering with fever. The doctor enters, but he isn't carrying medicine. He's carrying a live chicken. He proceeds to pluck the feathers from the bird's backside and then straps the live, squawking chicken directly onto your swollen, agonizing buboes. The logic: they believed the chicken's warmth or its breath would draw the poison out of your body and into the bird. Thousands of chickens died this way, and unsurprisingly, so did the patients, usually with an added infection from the bird. But it gets weirder. If you couldn't find a chicken, the next best thing was apparently the toad therapy. Doctors would take a large dried toad and place it against the plague sores. If the toad didn't swell up and burst from the poison, they thought it wasn't working. Some even went as far as to suggest that the patient should literally eat crushed up toads or snakes to build immunity. Can you imagine the sheer desperation it takes to swallow a concoction of reptiles just for a slim chance at survival? As the plague intensified, the remedies moved from the bizarre to the truly toxic. For the wealthy elite who could afford premium care, doctors prescribed something called crushed emeralds. Yes, you heard that right. They would take precious emeralds, grind them into a fine powder with a mortar and pestle, mix it with water, and force the patient to drink it. It looked like a sparkling green potion, but in reality, swallowing shards of crushed minerals did nothing but tear up the patient's internal organs from the inside out. It was quite literally a rich man's death. If emeralds didn't work, there was always the king's cure, arsenic. In a twisted bit of logic, some medieval physicians thought that the plague was a poison. You should fight it with a stronger poison. They would feed patients small amounts of arsenic, hoping it would kill the plague before it killed the person. Spoilers, it almost always killed the person first. Now let's talk about the smell. People believed the plague was caused by miasma, bad air. So, to combat the smell of death, they turned to aromatherapy with a disgusting twist. While some carried bouquets of flowers, the origin of the ring around the rosy nursery rhyme, others were told to sit in public latrines. The idea was that the strong smell of human waste would overpower the weak smell of the plague miasma and keep the disease away. Imagine spending your final days sitting in a 14th century sewer, hoping the stench of feces would save your life. It's a level of horror that modern history books often gloss over. But the most disturbing part of this history isn't just what they put on their bodies, it's what they did to their souls. As the death toll reached millions, a group known as the Flagellants appeared. These were thousands of men and women who traveled from town to town, shirtless, whipping themselves with heavy leather straps tipped with metal spikes. They believed that by punishing their own flesh, they could appease God and stop the plague. They would sing haunting hymns while blood poured down their backs, creating a spectacle of mass hysteria that actually helped spread the disease faster as they moved from one infected city to the next. There was also a deep, dark superstition involving the smell of the dead. In some parts of Europe, it was believed that if you smelled the breath of a dying man, you would instantly catch his soul and his sickness. This led to people sealing their windows and doors with wax, trapped inside their homes with the very fleas that were killing them. Silence fell over the great cities of the world. No dogs barking, no children playing, just the constant clink-clink of the death carts and the chilling cry of, "Bring out your dead." For those who survived the initial swellings, the doctors had one final brutal trick up their sleeves: bloodletting. This was the cornerstone of medieval medicine. They believed the body had 4 humors or fluids, and the plague meant you had too much blood. They would slice open a vein or apply dozens of leeches to a patient's body until they were pale and weak. In many cases, the patient didn't die of the plague. They died of massive blood loss and shock, presided over by a doctor who thought he was doing them a favor. Perhaps the most mysterious cure involved something called mummy powder. Throughout the 14th and 15th centuries, there was a massive black market for ground-up Egyptian mummies. Doctors believed that the ancient resins used in mummification held magical healing powers. People were literally eating the remains of ancient royalty, hoping that the vitality of a 3,000-year-old corpse could stop the black spots from appearing on their skin. It was a macabre cycle of death feeding on death. As we look back on these 8 minutes of history, it's easy to think of these people as ignorant, but they were human beings, just like us, facing an invisible enemy they couldn't see and didn't understand. Their cures were a reflection of a world where the line between magic, religion, and medicine was completely blurred. They used chickens, emeralds, and even human waste, not because they were foolish, but because they were terrified. The Black Death eventually faded, but it changed the world forever. It led to the end of feudalism, the rise of better wages for survivors, and eventually the birth of modern medicine. We learned the hard way that you can't cure a biological war with live birds or crushed stones. So, the next time you have a headache and reach for an aspirin, take a second to be grateful. Grateful that you're not being prescribed a potion of crushed emeralds or being told to spend the afternoon in a sewer. History is full of shadows, and the cures for the plague are among the darkest. Thanks for listening to this journey into the bizarre past. If this story gave you the chills or made you rethink your love of history, let me know in the comments. Sleep well tonight and stay curious.